What is up, YouTube? You might catch a little glimpse of what's behind me, get an idea where this video is going. Still on the hunt for my next car. Today we checked out a C5 Zo6 and a C5 base model to get our impression. To C5 or not to C5? Alright, so let's talk about the C5 Corvette. So originally I was going to film while I was driving the cars. But there's plenty of videos online of people ripping around in their Corvettes. Everybody knows what it sounds like. They were good. Unfortunately, my triple suction cup to the window of the car mount hadn't showed up in time. So I opted to just go drive the cars and talk about it after. So let's talk about it. There were a few issues with the two cars I drove. Well, let's start off with talking about the specs and situation with the cars I saw today. So today I went and looked at a C5 Zo6, and the dealership also had a C5 base model. Both cars looked good. They were in good shape. The problems were not super obvious right at the beginning, but we're going to talk about them. So the Zo6 was great. It had tons of power. I didn't turn traction control off because they're not my cars and I was just trying to be respectful. But even with traction control on, when I got on it, I want to say I was in second gear going maybe 40. When I got on it, it was still trying to light them up. It's got plenty of power. It also had extremely lively on-center reaction in the steering wheel. So like when you're driving, as soon as you touch the wheel or the slightest little motion of the steering wheel made the car react. I was very surprised at how reactive the steering was. It felt really good. The problem was when I was cruising at like 50, just cruising along, the car just felt like it was not planted. It was like shimmying around. And when I got back to the dealership after driving the Zo6, I hopped out and I was checking out the car. And I looked at the tires. The DOT markings on the tires indicated that the tires were built in the third month of 2011. So the tires were almost 10 years old. So I would venture to say that the tires were a big part of the problem with how that car felt. Otherwise, the car felt really good. It was strong. It pulled hard. It was completely stock. It had 27,000 miles on it. Some super dad pinstriping all over the outside. Didn't look good. And it had the red and black interior. Also didn't look good. The shifter in the car is horrendous. The knob is like this gaudy, clunky thing, and the throws are like tractor or like F-150 truck throws. Like, this is not a good shifter. Otherwise, I didn't have any major complaints. It was definitely, how to say, the build quality wasn't great. It wasn't awful. The car didn't have a bunch of rattles. It didn't sound like it was put together with Legos and by a bunch of little kids. It was okay. The overall impression I had of the car, I really wish it had different tires on it. If it had different tires on it, it might have completely changed my opinion. Because honestly, I liked the car. It felt good. It was torquey. The awful shifter, there's a couple options out there for him. I think it could be made a lot better. Maybe I'd have to fab something myself. The aftermarket shifters in existence that I've been able to find don't dramatically reduce the throws to the level that I would like to see them. I know there's some limitations with the way that shift box is designed because the trans is in the back and the shifter's on the torque tube about halfway forward in the car, but I think it could be made a lot better, so like that wouldn't probably be an end-all be-all for me. There's no, where the dealership was, it's all straight roads. So I didn't really get to go experience it turning, which is what I would use the car for. So I don't really care how it drove in a straight line. It was cool to get to experience the power, but I know what an LS feels like. I kind of knew what I was going to expect. I've driven a couple Corvettes before. I mean, all things considered, like, it was a good car. It's definitely a Corvette. It definitely didn't have very good build quality. I've been told that Corvettes are really hit or miss, and this was supposed to be one of the better ones to come out of Kentucky, at least with regards to like rattles. I've been told that they're rattle boxes. This one didn't really rattle at all. The trunk liner, the roof liner of the trunk had fallen off. It was laying on the floor of the trunk when we got in it. I don't know if there was just a missing piece from the parcel shelf behind the driver and passenger seat in the car, but there was like some random foam that when you touch it, it immediately degraded and turned into powder. The engine bay was clean. It looked pretty good. And the interior is atrocious. C5 interiors are not good. Whatever. So then I drove this base model, and that one had good tires. They were DOT stamp 17, like mid 17 tires. And it had exhaust, like a big cowl induction hood. What else was done to that one? It had a Hurst shift knob. I couldn't tell. The shift didn't feel much different from the other car, from the Z6. So I'm not sure if it was the actual Hurst shifter or if it was just the knob. But the car was really hard to get into reverse. So it makes me feel like something with the linkage was done. Like it wasn't just the standard shifter, like it was maybe the Hurst shifter. And it had a really heavy clutch in it. So the guy at the dealership was telling me that this one had potentially had some stuff done to it in the past. And the guy clearly had a bigger, more heavy duty clutch to account for the extra power that was getting made. It looked better than the Z06. I like the way the Z06 looks better with the kind of coupe style, where it's got a trunk instead of a slant back. But I really like the yellow on that generation Corvette. And it had black wheels. I'm not hugely into black wheels, even though the 135 has black wheels on it. But it looked good on the yellow car. And the exhaust was good. It was really loud. It was definitely too loud for me. If I get one, what I'd like to do is leave the stock exhaust. So do maybe headers, cat delete, X-pipe if that's necessary. I'm not even 100% sure on my Corvette mods, like what does it need to make good power. But maybe an X-pipe, and then put exhaust cutouts right before the rear muffler. So if I want it to be loud, I can push a button and make it loud. If I don't want it to be loud, I can keep it stock-ish sounding. So the base model car had some questionable history stuff. The guy at the dealership brought it up, not me. He was a real straight shooter. The dealership, the people at the dealership were really cool. I told him straight up, like, if I'm buying a C5, it's definitely going to be a Z06. But they had a base, and I was like, it'd be kind of nice to compare the two. So he was like totally cool with letting me drive it. Of course, I was totally respectful. I wasn't out ripping on the cars. I mean, I got on both of them a little bit. I wanted to feel the difference between the two. But they were good people. He was totally cool about letting me check out the cars. And I would definitely buy from them in the future if they had a car that I wanted. I don't think that Z06 is for me. Not because of the necessarily the tire issue. Tires are a simple fix. And I'd be willing to bet that would make it feel tight like I expected it to. But because that Z06 had like 26,000 miles or something, and it was just more than what I want to spend on a Corvette. I think I could get a nice Z06 with like 70,000 miles for like 15, and they were asking a little bit more than I want to spend on it. I would have made, it's not an unreasonable number for such a low mile car. And if the car felt perfect to me, I might have been more into it. But between the shimmy, which I'm again pretty sure is tires, and the goofy pinstriping on it. Oh, and it also had the two-tone red and black interior that I did not like at all. Although I plan on probably ripping most of the interior out of the car anyway. I don't want to have to do it because I don't like the way the interior looks. Yeah, so the dealership was Cincinnati Automotive Group, and they had, so kind of off topic, but they had some really cool cars there. So when I first walked in the door, now I'm going to stereotype my local area a little bit. So this dealership was in Lebanon, and it's more of like a country-ish area in Ohio. And I walked in the door, and like I expected Corvettes. Like that's the kind of cars I expected to see. But I walked in the front door of this place, and there was a first gen NSX, a Evo 10, which if anybody's in the market for an Evo, it's probably not going to be cheap. But that Evo had like super, super low miles. I think he said like 16 or 20 or something like that. Like really low miles for an Evo 10. And it was in pristine shape. Really, really nice car. Really nice Evo 10. And then they had this extremely obscure Japanese, like a coach. I don't know if that's a term that people would be familiar with, but coaches were like, when cars first came about, cars were really generic and basic, and they were functional. They were tools, And then wealthier people started having their cars built into coaches, and they would give them plush interiors and fancy stuff and make them nice, like buying your high-end luxury car versus, something that just gets you A to B. So it's some Japanese coach builder brand, and basically they took a 240SX chassis, and it was funny because you'd look in through the windows and it was all 240SX. Like the center console, it had this really tall, it was an automatic, it had this really tall shift knob, but like outside of like that, it was all very 240SX, which was kind of hysterical. But on the outside, it looked like a early Rolls Royce, or one of those old cars with the big flared fenders and like a little box where the engine is with the flared fenders out on the side. Just a really unique car. So that was cool. Tesla, X6, some cool stuff in the dealership. But yeah, if anybody's in the market, the NSX was already sold, but that Evo, that's a good buy. It's a collector quality Evo 10. And there's not going to be a lot of those left soon, just like all the other cool JDM cars from the era. But yeah, dude, so don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.